Actually, I think I've actually almost sort of seen you sort of take on your daddy duty wholeheartedly. And in fact, when Zion was born, I probably spoke to you maybe a week or two after on Zoom, and it was literally Cephas holding little Zion in his hand while he was doing his calls. So at least you've now got to the baby monitor. Maybe it's a bit more light relief for you, right? I mean, that's an
Hey,
improvement
listen,
there.
listen. When you're not tripping over your shoes to get to him before you've calls off the side of the bed, you know what I mean. When he's here, it's like you got him. When you're watching him on the monitor, if he starts moving, do you know what I mean? You got to make yourself
You got to be
available.
on it. So basically,
It's different.
if you make a quick exit, we know what's happened.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah. That's what's going on. That's what I'm dealing with.
So look, I mean, actually coming on to that, you've written, and I said in my intro, quite a phenomenal sort of thought piece on the back of Zion's birth, and clearly it's left a massive sort of place in your heart, and what your aspirations are for the future. I'd love for you to just to kind of talk a little bit around that, and perhaps what you feel passionate about.
It's interesting. It's often introduced, and even I sometimes touch on it as something I wrote after the murder of George Floyd, because more people within the world will understand that timestamp more than the birth of my son. But actually, it was a response to the birth of my son, because had I not been welcoming my first son to the world, if George Floyd was murdered, that letter probably wouldn't exist. And if it did, it wouldn't be a letter to my son. So I think it's very interesting, to articulate it as something that came off the back of the birth of my son. Because actually, when George Floyd was murdered, I didn't really want to do much because I was a bit drained, fed up, tired, overwhelmed, to mention a few things, frustrated and more. And my son's due date was the 26th of May. So he was, we were expecting him on the 26th of May. I suspended all my meetings, and then the day before, I get a message saying, "Look at what's happened in America. This guy's been killed." So at a time where I'm looking to welcome my first son into the world, a black boy, a black man is being killed, and in the way that he was killed. So I'm at this really weird intersection of feeling, emotion, and I felt it was a very strange time for me.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to say, honestly. It must have been kind of a weird time, but what did it mean to you to write that letter?
Nothing is promised. So I didn't write that letter with a promise that something was going to happen. But I wrote that letter with hope. And I wrote that letter with the understanding that I'm in a position to connect what I've coined as enlightened soft power to Black Renaissance. And in the UK. And it was 5 people that gave me a ring after George Floyd was murdered. I got hundreds, if not thousands, of messages across social media, emails from loads of people. If you remember that time, it was like the zeitgeist of anything Black, anything humanity. It was the biggest movement I'd ever seen in my life. Some people will tell you that it would be like, the climate change stuff. But climate change affects everybody. Being Black is a lived experience. So when you see people in Russia holding up signs in Russian saying Black Lives Matter who are white or Caucasian, when you see people in, Japan holding up signs saying Black Lives Matter in their language, you have to understand the movement has transcended our own reality. So for me, it was the biggest movement I've ever seen in my lifetime. And talk about marketing. If any one brand had slapped their logo on the back of Black Lives Matter, it would have probably been one of the most received brands of 2020 or of our generation, because it was so big at that time. And I'm not saying that companies should have done it, but I'm trying to explain the gravity of what Black Lives Matter last year and the Black Renaissance that was born after the murder of George Floyd was, and how powerful that was. And for the first time in my lifetime, I saw Black people being able to be candid, particularly in the UK, in a way that we'd never been before, speaking truth to power, calling out leadership, calling out organizations, saying things very directly. And sometimes in some cases, very, in a way that wasn't polite. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you can be direct and polite, and it was interesting because the energy that was born from last year meant that when Black people did that, they weren't shut down or shut out. In fact, they were listened to and heard. And loads of organizations did these town halls and said, yo, come and speak. And the global CEO was present or the UK CEO was present. And they got Black people to come and share their trauma. And then they picked the best of us in their organizations to drive the conversation forward. And that was one big mistake, because what that did, from my experience speaking to a lot of companies since, is it shut leadership away from the reality of that conversation. And so some Black people use it as an opportunity to progress or get closer to whiteness or closer to leadership. And the challenge there becomes, if that's the only way that some Black people can get closer to leadership, we end up feeding the very system that we're trying to fight against, because we want Black people to progress, not just because they're Black, but because they're good at what they do and they deserve to progress. And so, and that's not progression. Just because you can speak to the CEO about Black issues does not mean progression is happening. And in fact, what we need is a world where CEOs and leaders and stakeholders and shareholders and investors and leadership is authentically connected to what's happening in humanity. Now, the last point I'll mention on that is, other than the hundreds of thousands of messages I received 5 phone calls, well, a couple phone calls, a couple emails and text from 5 white men. And that was a deciding factor for me to do something as well. Because again, where do you draw the line between the change and the rebellion? I said this many, many, many years ago, and I brought it back with this last year's Renaissance. Because some people look at the rebellion as negative, but actually sometimes it takes the rebellion to stoke change, or to spark change. And, last year it felt very much like the rebellion, which was needed. And rebellion is very anti-system. Rebellion is very much, the current is going this way and something does that and the current starts going that way. And, rebellion is not bad always. But I lean more towards the change, because the change says we try and turn the tide together. And, I may be wrong, because I don't know how much has changed in isolation or rebellion in our world and in our history. But, rebellion happened and people listened, because I've been asking for change. People don't know what I've been doing. I've been asking for change for time, but going over to people, the media market, all different companies, financial services everywhere. How can we work together to change stuff for Black people, Black men, Black people? Not many people was really on it like that. I'd achieved a lot with what I'd done, but so when I had the opportunity open for us to start that change conversation, because we can bang our head on the wall and say, we don't like it, we don't like it, we don't like it, and go out and march and say, no justice, no peace all day long. But if the people that sit within positions of power that control the system don't use their privilege and their leverage and their influence to deconstruct a system that they control, then we're just going to be banging our head and rebelling for time, and nothing will change. It will be passed on to people that look like them and act like them and, follow suit. So 5 guys, and for the context of this show, and because you might know some of them, one of the people that reached out was Paul Pullman, who I know Richie knows. And Paul is one of the most enlightened human beings I've come across in my lifetime. I've had the privilege to call friend. But beyond that, he sends a message. What can we do now? Very direct, very candid. We need to get leaders to stop paying lip service. Another guy called Andrew Denton, who runs a company called Alpha. Another gentleman sends me an email called Steve Riley, who was the CEO of Ernst & Young at the time. And Simon Pegg, who's the actor and the producer, sends me a note. And Phil Thomas, who you guys will be aware of or know as well. So Phil Thomas, who heads up Cannes. So Phil, I remember Phil calls me, feels like, this is what's happening in New York. This is what's happening, because they've got the New York office, and they was in like almost the epicenter of some of that piece. And so he's like, and I guess what the interesting part about these conversations are is, the context and the lead up. And so Phil particularly and Paul, over the years, I've spoken to them both about the Black British Network, having a united voice that's centralized, that speaks towards legacy and not just a moment in time. And so that was part of the conversation. Me and Paul end up having like conversations every week, like, twice a week sometimes. And similar with Phil, Simon, Andrew. So with regards to the connection to advertising and media and Black universe marketing, there were a few people in that. And then I end up speaking to just under 100 CEOs and executives of some of the biggest companies in the world, So full circle for the BBN, we've signed up 17, not near enough the amount I spoke to for many reasons. We might not be able to get into it for time, but from the advertising and media marketing world, we signed up AMV BBDO. That's through Sarah when she was a CEO. We signed up Mother. So I was Katie and Ben over there, and Robert Saville and Andy as well. Are engaged, and I had a really great conversation with Robert Saville. You guys will appreciate, he's not someone that does interviews and such, but when I was able to sit down with him, we exchanged quite deeply. And Publicis Group, so Annette King was the sign off for that. Magnus was a big supporter. Sue Frugley was a really important piece of that, and
Cephas, I want to come in because I think what you just shared in terms of some real personal feelings and thoughts, and the moment in time, I just want to say a massive thank you.
Blessings, bro.
It really is. That was a very special moment for me on the show, and through all the guests we've had. I've literally had sort of the hairs at the back of my neck standing as you were talking, and it was just insanely powerful. And coming on to that, I mean, the one thing that really stuck with me was the thought when you said that this is all about lived experience. And I guess in that sense, there's something that's stemmed across, and stemmed across you, that you felt that your life's work was about really becoming that spokesperson and champion, and that comes with all sorts of things, I'm sure, with it, but you're insanely brave to do it.
Can
And
I
I think
just say something to that point quickly? But just for the record, I don't feel like my life's work is this. I feel like I've taken a huge cut out of my reality and my world to focus on this. I'm not passionate about waking up every day and driving the Black conversation forward. That is not my passion. I almost feel I have to do it because of my position. Because when I looked around and I saw those 5 guys calling me, they weren't calling other people. When I looked at my network of leaders, which I have many, I didn't see another Black person that was talking to all of these different people. So then my proposition then became, how do you connect the dots of influence? Not because I want to. That's not what I want to wake up and do. That's not my, thing. But for me, it's like I didn't see anyone else that was able to navigate that. And then, interestingly enough, to this particular conversation in industry, there were a lot of people that wrote letters and did initiatives and did activations that were not Black. And then they channeled all of the activations and the initiatives that they did towards their own business, which was not about pushing the Black conversation forward. And that is part of what informed me to say, who is this actually for? well, firstly, it's for Black people, and secondly, it's for the next generation. And so I held my son in my arms and I looked at all the optics of all these people that came out and turned the website black and marketing, right? In the industry, right? George Floyd this and George Floyd that. Where's their George Floyd now? Where's their black branded black and white brand now? And that's where some advertising and marketing companies get it wrong. They think it's just an advertising and marketing piece. And so they got bare leaders to sign stuff and bare leaders to do stuff. So even for me, like in conversation with a lot of the similar people and some even above the people that signed some other letters, it's almost like, well, we've signed that now, or we're doing that now. And I'll talk to these leaders and say, well, what does that mean you do? What do you do off the back of that? And they couldn't tell me. One person showed me, and again, it's like the what they received as opposed to what they signed about George Floyd was so broad, it didn't even have black in the document. And if I told you the organizations who it was, you man will know because they're in your industry. So for me, it's like, this is not what I want to do. Just wanted to add that bit for the sake of the record. Like family, you Drummer Boy Studios, you already know like what man's been on. Other things, I want to make films. There's so much in my universe that I'm able to do and create, but I've had to hold back on a lot of these things. Because if I don't do this conversation, I'm genuinely concerned that my son will live in the same movie that I've been living in for the past 30 years.
Cephas, it's a point brilliantly made about at sometimes some marketing folks inappropriately try to capitalize upon things. And actually, Mark Ritson wrote a brilliant article pointing out that all exclusively white boards are some of the companies that really cashed in on blackout. So I'm happy and proud of the fact that our company didn't, because we didn't think we weren't, it wasn't rightful to do so. We weren't in the place where we should be trying to cash in on a conversation that was happening. So I think brilliant point. I'm interested to understand what you think it is you really would be doing if this conversation was being able to be carried by somebody else. What do you think is your ultimate calling, Cephas?
Well, it's not a matter of think, it's a matter of what I was doing. And I think for me, at the same time, it's a matter of what I was doing. It's also a matter of what does destiny have in store. I believe we create destiny as destiny creates us. And so sometimes the thing we want to be doing is the thing we don't do, and the thing we don't want to be doing is the thing we do. And, you know, all these type of stuff. But what was I doing? And Richie me and him have been chopping up for a minute. So one of the things I was doing was Drummer Boy Studios. Drummer Boy Studios was my vision realized for creating what I coined as the WeWork of the creative industry. At the time before meeting, Richie had raised £1 million thereabouts on paper, was in front of a 22,000 square foot building stretched across 2 floors. The owners had offered me £1 million towards capital contribution. We'd signed up BDP as our official development partner, architectural practice organization. You know, I was talking to people like Richard Rogers at the time. We were looking at the worlds of media, music, film, fashion, enterprise, and gaming, and I wanted to create this hub. At the same time, I'd love to make movies and film. My network puts me in a position to be able to have those conversations at a very deep level at positions where, you know, of influence. I want to invest in businesses. When I was heavily depressed and suicidal many, many years ago, I wanted to take my life. I didn't believe love existed, and I took everybody out of the world. And I took everybody from New Cross. I was in New Cross, South East London. I took everybody from London. I took everybody from the UK out. I took the whole globe out, and I imagined a world with nobody in it. At that point, I said, if there was nobody else in this world, there'd be no reason for my existence. So I added everybody back in one by one. And that's when I came to the realization that about people, there's no purpose. And that was my driving factor. So when I talk about being almost this idea, you said champion of diversity, I say champion of humanity. I'm not even really a fan of the word champion, because I feel like the champions some champions have let us down, and people fall in love with this idea of being a champion as opposed to this idea of actually seeing change. And so again, you know, we need to look at who we champion and who we push, because it's a lot of them out there are just interested in that title. I'm not. I'm interested in the change. So I could and would be doing a lot of different things. And and I still want to do a lot of different things, but I put them on hold because I'm driving the Black British Network. I'm conscious that I cut Richie off before as well because I
No,
went.
look, no, don't be silly. We go with your ebbs and flows, Cephas. You don't go with
Bless
ours.
him.
Um, you know, honestly, I don't know if you'd be willing to talk about this, but you know, when you talked about the way that you perceived life before,
Mm.
why was that? Like, what have you had time now to think about why you were in that space, and probably more, you know, probably as relevant is how did you get yourself out of there? What did you?
Yes, yeah. So I'm comfortable. Um, yeah, I thought about the time. That's why I didn't take my life. You know, I'd rather take my life. So, why was I in that space? Because I didn't believe love existed. As you said in the beginning, I believe generous. You said something along those lines. I give a lot of myself. So, my money, my time. Um, I also give. Uh, this is interesting. So, I also give my silence. It's a weird way to put it. I've never said it like before. So, in positions where I could say something, where I could, you know, destroy someone with my mouth or respond in a type of way because I feel emotionally charged or led to. Sometimes, not all the times, but most times, actually, most times, I will pull myself out of a situation and I won't destroy and I won't, you know, go off, or I won't, even if it's not destroy, I won't like articulate my situation in a way that will put the other person here. I might disconnect myself from the situation. To do that means I haven't always had that outlet. And that can be very painful when people are doing things around you and you can respond in a certain way and understanding your power, you eject yourself from the situation as opposed to respond. So, you know, that's how I would, I guess, have dealt with it over the years. But it was mainly because I didn't feel love existed as well. So, you know, these are the things. And I gave, and I didn't receive anything back. So what saved my life logically, well, what saved my life was me taking a logical approach to why are we here in the first place? And that's when I did the exercise I've said. I made that up myself in my bedroom. And I guess the poetry behind that was I didn't necessarily need to receive anything back because I wasn't here for myself. I was here for everybody else. I need to be in a good space to give to other people, but you know, and so my biggest dream became I want to own one of the largest organizations in the world because I wanted to live to give to one of the largest scales possible. From my time, my money, my resources, my influence, my mind. I want to be able to do that freely. So I set my target is that there's no one particular business or industry. Um, I'm very good at the people stuff. I'm very good at humanity. I'm very good at, if that's a thing, I'm very good at building relationships. So what you see as a result of the murder of George Floyd is my relationship saying, yo, like, what are we saying? And yeah, that's just, you know, then that point is, do you go left or do you go right? And I say, we create destiny as destiny creates us. And so if you go left, there's a whole different destiny. If you go right, it's a whole different destiny. But at the same time, who I am now stood for me here when I was 16. That's how I feel it. That's how I see it. And if I could see who I am now at 16, it might have informed my trajectory a bit differently. I might have been a bit more comfortable, a bit more calm. You know, I don't know. Yeah. So, but I guess depression and suicide put me more in a calm space because I didn't want to be here. So everything else was a bonus. That's why, you know, Richie, you might appreciate it if you say, how you doing? Like one of the first things I often say is I'm alive. You know what I mean? Because for me, that's like the base point for me because there was a point in time where that wasn't necessarily a reality at that point. So
Cephas, there's such an incredible generosity in the way you talk about why you do what you do. So you carry a huge burden. You give a lot of love and time and effort and money and attention. And you've had dark times in the past. So how do you look after yourself now? How do you stay resilient? How do you maintain that work ethic? I mean, it's superhuman. How do you do it?
great question. I try to be present in every moment. So as much as I have a lot to say, and I have a lot to say because I think loads and I hold those thoughts very closely and I'm very still with those thoughts. So in this conversation, it's not hard for me to necessarily articulate myself because I've thought about a lot of the different things that you've asked me many times over the years in many different ways. That's just how my mind works. So then the ability to articulate myself becomes a gift as well as a grace. Now, understanding I've got so much to say, I'm present enough to be still. So I'm present enough that even sometimes I'm in a room full of people, I'm on a panel and I don't have a direct response for what I'm being asked or fireside, I just won't answer. But a lot of people aren't present enough to even be slow enough to do that because the assignment is come and speak. The assignment is come and give us something. Now that's just one manifestation of my ability to be still or to be present. So I could be walking from the living room to the kitchen and I just stand still for a second and I just take in that moment. I could be in a meeting with someone and I'm not just making eye contact because someone said you'll be taken seriously if you make eye contact. If I make eye contact or when I make eye contact, I feel that person, I feel that room, you know what I mean? I feel that what's around me. And I'm still enough to remember that this is reality. A lot of us just go through reality very quickly. So by the time we take a break, it's like the first time we remember that the weight of the world, you know what I mean? I try and do that every day in every way possible. When I hold my son, like the hug has a meaning. It's not just a human function to me. It's like, yo, how much did I love you? You know what I mean? And it's these type of things. So on the train also, so more time, I'm still enough to be in control of my response because I'm present. It's very strange. So if someone stops me on the train or which they do or something, then I'm present enough. And also I stand on the other side, which sometimes works not in my favor because now I'm recognized to some degree. You do have people that will approach you and, you know, or that will notice you in public and want to say something to you, but they don't know if you're going to be a prick or not, basically. So my ability to read that and to stand in that sometimes puts me in a position that when they do come over, my response is a bit more like, yo, you know what I mean? So that they don't feel like, yo, how come man like ignored man? And I don't have to do that, but I'm still and I'm present enough to like respond in accordance to the situation. Or this is also what helps me speak to CEOs and leaders who are white men, much older than me, and are sometimes very much uncomfortable about the conversation in the first place because I'm able to stand and be still enough. So that's how I, in a weird way, take time out. I do also take time out physically, like I'll go to the park with Zion when it was hot, or we'll go for a walk, or I'll go for walks, or I'll get lost and like anywhere. And then just like when I finish getting lost, either find my way back or go on the Google Maps or some shit. So I do that by myself. But beyond all of that, I think about stuff. But beyond all of that, you know, it's about me being present enough to be in touch with my humanity, and also in touch with my reality as well. So
You know, you talk about your reality, Cephas, and it really is still a precarious world out there, I'm sure. And I know that recently you were involved personally. I mean, you've been involved in a few incidents is over time that have been probably very, very uncomfortable.
yeah,
But one that obviously went largely public was around what happened in the shopping mall a
yeah.
couple of months ago now. How did that make you feel?
Made me feel a level of pain and discomfort that because it's stuff that's happened before, in it. Like I'm a black man in a white man's world in the West. So, you know, these things happen because black people and black men are often looked at through a white lens and gaze. And so even through marketing, right? Who are the people talking about us? And when it is black people, right, in the marketing brief and the ad or whatever it is, they're often doing it under uh, white stewardship. And so often you have to pander to the cliche, this is what it means to be urban and other things. You know what I mean? And we ain't got the time, fam. we ain't even got the time to articulate the proposition. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's like I talk about the success of empathy is making people feel like you care, whereas the success of empowerment is making people feel like you don't have to. So the moment a really well-meaning white man doesn't have to care for me to change my reality is the moment I'm truly empowered. You know, but we consistently perpetrate this reality that says, as long as you're progressing within our system, or as long as you feel you're progressing within our system, you win. But no, you don't win, because a lot of the people that control and run that system don't understand or want to understand my reality. And so they continuously have to give us permission, or they consistently have to tell us what the narrative is. So full circle from what happened to me at Blue Water Shopping Centre, it was House of Fraser security guards. We launched the Portrait of Black Britain series there. And when I did the launch, I was giving a speech and I said, I was growing up so used to seeing pictures of Black people with flies on their faces. You know, but here lies a portrait of Black people with no flies. And everyone starts laughing and clapping, shit like this. And, you know, what happens when you put, not even when you put, what happens when a Black person puts himself behind the lens? Because I didn't wait for someone to put me behind the lens or to commission me to do that. I did it myself. The Portrait of Black Britain was born from the BBN, which is born from my commitment to Zion, from Letter to Zion. So no white person said, do this. Or no big organization that's mainly run by white men or white people said, we're going to give you X to do this. Everything I've got was an idea in my head and I manifested it. And that's why people also are baffled as to like, what does this guy do? Like, how is he doing? What's he doing? And I've heard people ask me them questions because I do what I want to do when I want to do it and how I want to do it. And if I channel that towards whatever I want, it will happen. And I'm currently building a lot of things behind the scenes strategically. But, you know, with regards to Blue Water, the House of Fraser security guards, the videos online so people can check it for time's sake. But I was buying a suitcase and run up after me, grabbed me. He said, did you pay for this? I said, yes, I kept it pushing. And I said to someone else, that even irritates me. That like when he did that initially, I was like, yeah. And I just kept it moving. Like, I'm so used to it. That's almost like I didn't even at that point stop to complain or do something. I mean, it wasn't until he stepped in front of me, then grabbed my arm and was like, you ain't going nowhere. Like, did you pay for this? And then I'm like, what's happening at this point? So then the rest is on video, and I say to one of the people that come, I'm going to speak to the CEO, and they say, no, you're not. And again, I'm like, you're not telling me I'm not going to speak to the CEO because you know who I am, or because you're telling me because you see a Black person in front of you and you think you don't have access, because that's what you've been conditioned to understand about my reality. But many people that know me will tell you, I'll walk into most rooms as probably one of the best connected, if not the best connected person in the room. And that's not me. I remember I sat down with Stephen Woodford for dinner, and he goes to me, of all the people I've met, you are the best connected person. You can imagine Stephen Woodford saying that, right? So he's met a lot of people in his lifetime. So, these are the things, and he's not looking at me but through the lens of like my relationships or my position within the ecosystem or within the country. He's looking at me and he's seeing my stereotype. He's seeing what I understand of your reality is that you could never speak to the CEO. Because why would you even say that? If someone says I'm going to speak to the CEO and you don't believe him, just be like, okay. I mean, he said, you're not. So I say to him, I'm telling you, I will. And then full circle. And me and that guy are blessed now, you know, the one I was speaking to, because I left him in love. If you really watch the video to the end, and I've seen him a few times after, and every time I see him, I show him love, because like I'm here to build bridges. I ain't trying to burn bridges. We could be out here burning bridges because Black people, Africa, has been done bad by the West, a lot of people, but let's build. And so the event we had on Sunday, Mark Allen, who's the CEO of Landsec, was on stage with me. It was a beautiful moment, man. I'll send you pictures if you want to use it.
Cephas, you speak with such elegance and you've shown such grace, but we're talking about painful things and talking about pain. All credit to you to speak with such eloquence about such painful things. I wanted to pick up on allyship. So I'm a white male. I'm trying to do my bit, but you talked about care and empowerment, and I just wanted to know a bit more about what's your advice to people like me who do have some position of privilege and power. What's the best things that we should be doing? I'm hoping some of the things you're going to say I'm already doing, but I'm very open to that. There's more I should do and to learn. So I just love your views.
The time we got left, we won't be able to go into everything. But very simple thing is build relationships, man. I say very often people want to preach an idea of parity with communities that have no proximity. Pause. So how do you set off on this mission to create an equal playing field or a forum of equity, when you don't have relationships with that community, right? This idea of parity and proximity. So if I had a friend that was disabled or in a wheelchair, some people don't really like that term as well, which is another conversation, but on a wheelchair and coming over for dinner, so you have to move the dinner table, right? Because now you have to consider how that person moves around your space. But if that person is not in your life, is not a friend, then the dinner table just stays by the wall. So how do we achieve parity of communities we have no proximity and people? That's why I don't like the word diversity. Somebody said to me, journalist, not in a negative way, but portrait of Black Britain shows the diversity within diversity. And that word diversity is flung about so much, like it's lost its purpose, really. So that says to him, no, because diversity is often seen as this other thing. It's the other. Portrait of Black Britain shows the humanity in diversity. And what often ends up happening as to why I think people can't be good allies or effective allies is there is no humanity in their allyship. It's very much top down. So with all the CEOs and leaders and everything that I talk to and I'm friends with and I've got relationships with, we might not be equal in our role in society. I do not know what it is, what it means to run a big marketing company or an agency or whatever. And they don't know how to run what I'm running and what I'm dealing with in various ways from the different businesses I've done over the years. But we are peers of the cause. And so again, if we can find alignment in a particular destiny, trajectory, vision, destination, if we can find alignment, that word allyship comes from align yourself to something. So again, it's like, if we can find that alignment, then we can be allies and we can come to the table with our superpower. A lot of organizations try to come to the table perfect, but I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking people to come with their superpower and with their ears and with their mind so that they can learn and they can help. Because what you have a lot of companies trying to do is paint a perfect picture. People should read Letter to Zion. So in Letter to Zion, I say the closest thing to perfection is reflection. It's a quote I come up with many years ago. And this idea that, great leaders and great leadership is not about trying to paint a perfect picture. It's about trying to create a reflective one in all manifestations of that word. So if I paint a picture of the world that is perfect, it will be my understanding of what I was led to believe perfect is. And that understanding for a white man that's 60 would have come from his parents or her parents that were born in even them in generations where Black people weren't really even out there like that with them or were oppressed. That's what perfection would have been passed down to them, right? So again, like if we keep trying to paint these perfect pictures, we've been conditioned to see perfection in something. So if we're painting, even if our organization is a reflective one, and so the power of marketing is the ability to reinvent the world through our lens, right? But however, it's one thing trying to reinvent the world, and it's another thing your organization embodying those values. It's another thing saying, oh, Black Lives Matter happened, so we need to put bare Black people on TV. That's not reflective of humanity. That's reflective of your sometimes it can be reflective of, you know, one of the worst things, one of the reasons why some CEOs didn't sign up is because I didn't press them to sign up to the BBN. The reason why I didn't press them is because I could tell the only reason they'd sign up is because they didn't want to be seen as racist. So it's a lot of white people that I've come across in my journey that, yo, like, call us anything, just don't call us racist. So that knee-jerk kind of, we need to put loads of black people on TV. We need to get as many black people on TV. Black! That, whoa. Chill out, family. What we need to be doing is building real infrastructure, real businesses, real organizations. I don't want one day of blackness. I don't want bare black people on an advert or programming something. I want black production companies that turn over millions. I want black agencies, black run and led agencies that understand the black reality, that don't have to do it underneath someone else's guidance. I want black ecosystems that have billions that can fund and put money into black organizations and black people who don't treat it as the closer I get to whiteness or the closer I get to one big brand, the better I am than other black people. Because that's what it ends up becoming. And this is what these companies don't understand. They give some black people an opportunity to, whether it's be on TV or do a program or do da. And again, like, it's some black people that gravitate towards that light, that glory. Because the closer I am to whiteness, the better I am than other black people. They let me in the house. And so some of us forsake the strength in the face of the glory. So I don't want to be the champion. I want to be the change. So for me, it's like, you know, I'm saying, so empowerment is where it's at for me, not empathy, not creating platforms for us, for the best of us. Oh, these are the best of the blacks. These are the ones that we like. These are the ones with loads of followers on Instagram. These are the ones with, because a lot of the time they're still on the climb too. That's not how we're going to, that's not how we're going to dismantle this thing. We're going to dismantle this thing when you stop positioning, and I'll end it here. There's one spot. So tell me, Mark and Richie, who's the white guy that created the crown? Who's the white guy that runs the production company that created the crown? Do you know? Yes or no? No. Okay, and what about Game of Thrones or any other of these big production? Who's the white guy that runs the company? Do you know? No, cool. You might have, but you don't. And that can be said for hundreds and thousands of production companies, hundreds of thousands of people, white people that you see on TV programs that don't have loads of followers on Instagram to be on those programs. They're on those programs because they're good at what they do. Why is it that every time it's a black person they use, they've got to be like, there's got to be some type of clout exchange or culture exchange? What that puts black people in a position to do is think that the only way I'm going to get in is if I, not because I'm great at what I do. There's so many great black videographers, production assistants, producers, actors, program curators, writers, so many great of that are black. But in isolation of, but I bet you can tell me the black person that white people are putting all over the, I'm saying, there's always a couple, there's a few of them that these are the best of the blacks. And the ecosystem that sets up is that we fight against each other for that one spot. Whereas a lot of people are not conditioned to do that because they're all competing as competitors. This can be taken not just from business, but into the world of work, I'm using film, TV, marketing, production. And so, no, it doesn't help us. I don't care how many black people flock towards one day of blackness. I don't care what they think the thought process behind it is. I sit in these conversations at the tables of power behind the scenes that are making these decisions and doing these things. And I speak to them across the board. So I come with a different level of insight. Not saying my insight is better or worse. It's a different level of insight. And then I'm able to articulate myself in this way. And we'll talk about some of this offline because I don't want to hot anybody up. But the reality of the situation is that doesn't speak to empowerment. Let's get a production company that's black. Let's just get one production company or maybe a handful that get millions of pounds of commissioning power from the billions that these companies have. Let's do that. Give a black production company £100,000 and see what they create. Heck, give them 50. But all now, you've got white-led production companies getting thrusted into the ecosystem with millions to curate programs, not for 5 years, for a year, to find talent. So don't give me one day of what's popping, what's up, hey, I don't care. I don't care if you get the biggest black person in the world to be on that program. I don't care. And this is what people are not hearing, because they don't chill with the people in the bits. Like they're not like, and even to the place where like we sometimes can succumb to this overarching white gaze and white narrative that because we don't see another way out. So Letter to Zion paints another way out. In Letter to Zion, I say, I want to see the FA and the Premier League as diverse, as black, as the football players on the pitch. I want to see that. How come I can't see that? That's what I say to Zion. I say, how come you did that? So you need to speak to some of these leaders like that sometimes. You making it complex. Oh, this metric, that metric. Family. How come we can't get a black person as a CEO of the FA? Straight. Or the Premier League? Let's ask. Because even if we made a black person the CEO of the FA, the Premier League, do you know how many years it would take for them to build that respect level amongst their peers? Engineer that ecosystem? So it's not just as simple as changing the person to a black face. Because will that black person be respected in the rooms of power, not just in the country, but globally? When they're speaking to DCMS and all the rest of the I'm saying, people think they're going to end systemic racism with a pledge and an action plan. Come off the things, man. And so for me, like, I look at Zion, I looked at him and I said, it's so confusing. Even our own brothers and sisters, we fight against each other. And then the system comes and compounds it, makes it worse. I don't know if I'm going to live to see the reality I've painted for you.
Cephas, this has just been so monumentally powerful, and I've never gotten as emotional as I have this show than I have before. Honestly, it's lost for words, quite frankly, man. And I've heard you speak so many times, but this is different. This morning has been so different. So I just, it's opened my eyes in a completely new way that I just hadn't seen before. So thank you, man. Honestly, Mark, do you want to go for it?
Share that thought, Richie. Cephas, what gift you've given us, Richie and I, but also hopefully many people beyond. I'm going to try and extract what I think I've heard. See where we get to. So we've talked many times about humanity, not diversity, but about humanity, a bigger calling, and that starts a tremendously powerful space. But some of the things you've talked about, how to be an ally is about building relationships, having parity and proximity. That towards the end in particular, this can't be about representation. And I'm now thinking of all the sort of slightly symbolic one-day activities. And actually, no, it's about business. It's about the systemic change. When you just said, I don't know if Zion will see the world I want to create, that says that's a calling to all of us. Hard to put a cap on all of this, but you've given a lot of love, a lot of generosity. I love the expression, we create destiny as destiny creates us. This is in our hands. Let's end this one positively by saying we can all contribute to a better world, but hey, this is painful, it's tough, there's so much to do. And, I speak as a person who benefits from the current reality, wanting it to be different. But also I'm just reflecting on when you talked about being present enough to be still. And I think many people are fighting many battles. I love the quote, be kind, everyone is fighting a great battle. And of course that includes all of us individually, and my goodness, you've fought your own, but I just love that thought of being present, to be still, to be calm in the moments that really matter. I'm very conscious. This has been really hard for me to try and try and capture your words, because you speak with such eloquence and pace on such a broad range of issues. So my bad. I'm struggling to actually pull it all together, but I think that was a profound moment for Richie and I in our lives, and I just thank you greatly for your time, Cephas.
Blessings. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And